Most conversations about AI start with machine. This one starts with a human. Welcome to the Human Layer AI. I am your host, Akash Sharma. And with me is Ruth Carter. On our platform, we invite leaders, knowledge workers, and professionals to find out how they deal and frankly cope up with the changing technical era, what decisions are being changed, what jobs would be displaced, and yet the judgment of human layer that still cannot be changed. Ruth here built an AI framework that deliberately makes you not feel good because she believes that is the ethical thing to do. Today, we are going to talk about the dynamic nature of ethic and its role on AI. Specifically, ethics in AI is not failing because people disagree in their values, but rather because it has been made deliberately unprofitable. Please, can you tell a bit about yourself, your personality, your interest, and about the theme we are talking?
Hi, my name is Ruth Carter. I am currently in the AI ethics, governance, and risk space where I design governance models and frameworks so that leaders in the AI space and organizations can see where intent and impact break down, and we can help to bridge the gap between those two areas. I think my guiding philosophy is that something that cannot face consequences should never be able to make human decisions. And we're seeing that a lot more with the implementation and deployment of these tools, which are very impactful on the human cognition. And most people get into them and use them without fully being aware of how it's shaping their minds in real time. So I try to make leaders aware that these tools are not as benign as we're marketing them. They have limitations, and we need to be aware of those limitations if we really want to impact society for the greater good.
In our first conversation, you said that the framework is not popular because ethics is unprofitable. Can you say it on the record and give your take, but unpack it?
So when I first designed the Continuum framework, I had one mission in mind: to be able to illuminate the truth of something that I was attempting to analyze. And I noticed some failures within ChatGPT, especially ChatGPT 4, where it was a lot of flattery, right? And it kept telling me how great my ideas were. And I know a lot of people, they experience this. ChatGPT tells them how great they are, how great their ideas are. But at my core, I think I am a researcher and a philosopher. And so I became aware that this thing that kept telling me I was great, like, I'm not that great. Right? I need to know the truth. And if you're not aware of your blind spots, then you can't grow as an individual. Growth tends to come through friction. Your ability to sit with discomfort, even with yourself. And it's not so much self-hatred as it is being objective, being honest about where your limitations are. And so I developed the framework because I wanted that, right? I wanted it to push back and to challenge me and to help me to see the limits of my own mind and my own thinking, and to address the prejudices and the biases that I have, that we all have. And at some moments, I might say did it too well because the human mind is built not really to see itself in its true form. We have this protective layer where if we look too closely at ourselves, we might not like the thing that we're seeing. So I really had to build something that can challenge me, challenge my thinking. And that, unfortunately, that removing that sort of pacification, I don't think many people would like that. And I even pitched it to someone in private equity, and he said, okay, it has some very interesting capabilities, but ethics don't sell. Remove that part if you want to make money. And I'm like, the foundational principle of this framework is its ethical backbone. If I remove it, then everything else that it responds to, it really will dismantle the entire system. So I put my foot down and said, no, we have enough flattery chatbots. I didn't want this one to be just like the others. And it never really got out of my sphere, right? I was never really able to deploy it because most people seem to love the flattery aspect of their chat.
Yeah, very true. I think we had a conversation about this as well. Did you have in mind only for personal use or also for professional use? Because such a framework that challenges you and increases friction some might say that it causes a hindrance to the productivity side if we look professionally.
If we look at the displacement that's happening currently in corporate and how labor is being replaced in a way that I don't think we've ever seen on this scale, except for the Industrial Revolution, when we got the steam engine and then we started to build these factories. Our survivability relies on our productivity as human beings. You do something, you do a task, and you're paid for your time and your labor. So now when you remove that aspect of it, you're hitting at people's ability to provide for themselves. So every decision that we make has downstream consequences that we're not adequately looking at right now in this space. You replace the senior level employee at your corporation, and that dismantles an entire team of people. We're not thinking about that. What happens to the economy when we displace thousands of workers and they can't find jobs because the market is saturated with labor, and we're not creating as many jobs to replace them because AI has taken their spot. This is something that could really cause economic collapse. And I wanted professionals to say, hey, maybe we slow down for 2 minutes before we make this decision. And our reliance or over-reliance on AI, if this is a tool that we're going to implement and use, and I don't think it's going to be going anywhere, then there is a better architectural structure to how we could create this so that we can have an analysis of what can happen in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, and not just look at this quarterly report of profits, because money is a finite resource. And when we think about how the economy works and how money is funneled back, you have to have consumers, and consumers are employees. So I wanted professionals to be able to say, hey, the CEO of this company, we have this big decision to make, and it analyzes your pros and cons and say, hey, I can build you a probability map of how this outcome can go based off of these decisions. And we all have blind spots. And it was designed to identify some of those blind spots. And of course, nothing is perfect. It has the ability to hallucinate as any AI that we have right now, because again, it does run on probabilities. But at the same time, it also allows you to see certain failure points and tells you where a decision needs a human mind and not an AI.
I could see why it would be bad for the developers if they said that,
Yes.
no, your decision is wrong. Just do something with your mental health.
It's an interesting thing because in order to be successful in the business world, you have to have blinders on, or you have to look at your goal. And a lot of times we look at the human impact as a distraction. But what happens when you get rid of half of your workforce and you're still producing? Who are you producing for? Who's going to buy your product or your services? You'll see that eventually people will make choices. They'll choose whether they need this thing to survive, and we're built to survive. So we're going to choose the thing that keeps the lights on or puts food on the table. And even to the extent that we will always choose the food on the table rather than keep the lights on, right? That's one of the things that we're noticing right now. People are defaulting on mortgages and they can't afford their rent. And so once we start to hit at these certain nodes within society, we have worse impact than if we build these systems ethically so that AI and humans can coexist in the same space. And I'm not seeing that currently.
If we make it so that AI does everything for us, we have no purpose or fulfillment. That was one of the most persuasive arguments about communism that I resonated with. It's not just about making products, it's about people working with their hands and creating something unique instead of mass producing.
And we see that with, for example, we're seeing this rise again with people wanting human-made things and things that are not mass-produced. Like you're seeing how these home bakers pop up and these small jewelry makers, and they're actually considering the model that they're operating under. They're doing quite well because I think we got into this mode where we wanted ease. So the corporations took over mass production. And a perfect example that I like to use a lot is bread. Bread is something that you can find everywhere. You can find it in the grocery store, you can find it at the corner shop, you can find it at the gas station. But now you're seeing people making their own sourdough loaf or they're making their own sandwich loaves, because I think we've come to realize again that things that are made with intention, things that we slow down to make, they benefit us more. And we like that human touch that really goes into it. And you taste the difference when you go to a bakery that is smaller, they produce less than when you go to the grocery store and you pick up a loaf of bread. And I think AI will accelerate this issue, right? Because when you hit at people's ability to produce things, we get more time and we start to wonder, what is the meaning of life? I don't have a job anymore, right? And my talents aren't being utilized. And we built this society of utilization, right? We get purpose through our job. What happens when that's replaced? What does it mean to be human? And I think we'll start to see these questions pop up more. We're seeing a shift even within the scientific community where we are now examining human consciousness and what it means to be conscious and self-aware. And for a long time, we had this mentality of shut up and calculate. We're not going to look at the hard questions of what it means to be here and purpose and all of these philosophical musings that we've had for generations. And now even science is starting to focus on consciousness and what it means to be human. And I think as AI takes over these spaces where people rely on their cognitive ability to produce work, we will be pushed back into this space where I really do believe that we'll see more artists popping up, more people who create crafts and want to slow down, create more beautiful things. And it's long overdue, in my opinion. But
something that is human.
Yes, something that is human. And I wrote an article talking about the balance that the universe seeks, right? I think it's a universal law that whenever you have one action, you will have a reaction. I said, okay, we will see a rise in these companies saying, oh, our whatever is done 100% by a human being. And a few months after I wrote that article, I started to hear it on the radio. It says, no AI, our radio station is 100% human. And then marketing companies, like, we want your work will be done 100% by a human. And I said, this is the thing that we don't realize, that no matter what systems we build, it's just, there's a push and pull. There is going to be a pushback. And we're seeing it. It's evolving right before our eyes.
Yeah. Okay. More dangerous than I think is cognitive atrophy.
Yeah.
So the study conducted in MIT, which did significantly AI use and cognitive atrophy.
Yes.
So my question is, how did you get the foresight to know that something is weird that is going on between humans and AI?
So, do you remember?
Could you also explain what is cognitive atrophy to the audience?
So, cognitive atrophy is when the human ability to analyze and critically think, it starts to decay, right? So it starts to get weaker, like a muscle that's underused. You'll see it gets smaller and it starts to shrink. So your cognition, your ability to think and analyze, come up with new ideas, the way that your neural pathways work, they start to fire less. One of the things that happens when we look at the human mind, our neurons love novelty, right? To be able to fire. So when we do new things, it builds new pathways in our brain and there's a lot of activity and it lights up. Even when it comes to learning something that's more neurological or something that is more cerebral, if you're thinking deeply, your brain uses a lot of energy, right? It burns through a lot of glucose. AI spits out its output and they copy and paste. There is no fine tuning of the response, even though we know that these chatbots, they are prone to making errors because they say things with confidence, and the human mind is built to accept something that is said confidently. And I have an example of this. As a young psychology student, we were speaking about language. I was talking about command sentences. If I'm having a conversation with you and you're across the room and I say come, that is considered a complete sentence because you is understood between us and here. So it's you come here, but we said come and it's understood because a lot of language is inference. And I mentioned that and my professor started to make fun of me in front of the class. And he said, oh, this sounds like Tarzan language, me, Tarzan, I'm Jane. And I'm like, no, that's actually how language works. A lot of things, we have
Colloquial.
euphemisms, a lot of these
Yeah.
things. So the class joined in and started to laugh at me with him.
Hmm.
And I remember going home and discussing it with my father, who was a teacher, and he grew up under colonial rule. So he learned a different form of English than I
Of
did.
course.
We had a discussion about it. And he said, yeah, that's how language works. And that is, you can look it up in any English textbook and you see these sup, or if you come or go, these things are understood, that there's an inference. But and I was like, why did they laugh? Why did they laugh? And it took me years to realize that whenever something is given a place of authority and it speaks with confidence, people tend to follow. They tend to take what is being said and they don't challenge it, because that's how the human mind works. These chatbots are given this authority that they're all knowing. They don't make mistakes. They're infallible. And so when they speak with confidence, you might, oh, this must be true. And whenever you begin to take answers, you stop thinking. You don't use your mind to its fullest potential. And one of the things that I noticed was the introduction of the cell phone. Most people knew at least 10 contacts off of the top of their head. We memorize phone numbers, right?
Yeah.
Now some people, they don't know their spouse's number. They don't know their kids' numbers. It's because we have this little device that stores it for us. And we don't have to think, and we don't have to use it. And I mapped that to AI. And I said, okay, if this can happen with a cell phone, what happens when people are relying on this AI to craft an analysis or write their work or even automate their workflow? What will that do to the human mind? So I realized this can have an effect on our cognition, where we don't use our minds as much. So we will start to see it begin to atrophy. But prior to that, I had already designed my framework to map the user's cognition over a period of time, because what it does, it uses syntactic data. So it uses how you construct your sentences, how the type of words that you use, how articulate you are, how many obscure, less used words have you used from when you started to now. So did you start out using simplified language and then you started to use more robust vocabulary, or did you start out using a more robust vocabulary and then over time it became more simplified?
Atrophy.
And yes, so that's one of the things to track. And then how complex are your prompts? Like, how are your prompts just A to B, or are they interdisciplinary? Are you mapping patterns across subject areas? So it maps all of that, which is the more novel features that other chatbots don't have, which is also brings me back to when the person I spoke with in private equity said, yes, he loved those features. He just didn't think that there was space in this field for one that was as ethical as mine.
So that naturally comes from our survival days, when a member of a tribe would say that a lion is coming, and it would have been better to believe him. What was the worst that could happen? That a lion would not come. Fear mechanism kicks in. So that's the problem. And I think another problem with large language models, they are based on people on the internet, and people lie. You have seen the flat earth. And if a person wants his thesis, let's say that it is off by 1 decimal, then that would also become another data for AI to train. And again, then how many humans would it take to fix it?
And we see that, right, with the bot accounts on the internet.
Yeah, of course.
And that's one of the more dangerous things for AI, because you're not even paying, you don't know if the data that this large language model is being trained on is integrous. You don't know where the data is coming from, because bots on the internet, they have an agenda, right? It's engagement farming, and they push a narrative, and then you expose something that has no biological feedback loops, that can't. Sitting here, AI does not have the ability to do that, right? Because primates we evolved for community. And so we have to be able to know if what the person next to me was saying, if it's true. So we developed the most complex, intricate, and elegant way of pattern recognition. So we know how to read body language, right? And a lot of communication, they say, is nonverbal. AI has to trust what is being said, right? It has no biological tie to anything. And this is why I tell people constantly that you cannot really trust something that has no interest in your survivability, right? Like, we share a common interest. We know that our survival as a species is largely linked to each other. We don't always put it in practice, but we know this. At the back of every human being's mind, we know that we have to survive together. And that's how we evolved, and we were able to last as long as we have as a species. So when you see that AI is being trained on data that it can't even really know is true or not, that of course will taint its output and how it processes things. You can have ethical dilemmas being given to AI that's trained on information from the internet, and it misses a lot of nuance. And we need to really be aware of this, because human beings, we can hold space for conflicting ideas in our minds, and we can look at something that is an ethical dilemma and know that there is no right answer to this, that sometimes the best answer is who gets hurt the least. And there may never be a path where no one gets hurt, but we look for the path with the least harm. But AI is not really trained to do that. It's really a lot of these black or white answers. And when the data itself is corrupted, then the output and the internal processing of this LLM will also be corrupted. And human bias is baked into everything. It's baked into
Big believer.
our literature.
Yeah.
The experiment was run, and it was a woman that did it, and she changed her name on her LinkedIn profile to that of a man. Just that. She just changed it to a male's name. And she noticed an uptick in her views and her engagement, and recruiters reaching out to her. LinkedIn got wind of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Gender-based bias in the algorithm. LinkedIn got wind of it, and she said she had a conversation with them, and they said they don't train their algorithm to favor one gender over the other. If you're training data, because we know that the higher up you go in your career, the less diversity we tend to see, right? It tends to be more male dominated, especially within certain fields. And if you have 100 profiles that you're training your algorithm on and 85 of them are male, that is a bias.
Of course.
And the algorithm, what it does now, it pattern matches. This is a male with this title at this position. The training data reflects something, and that's the thing that we need to be aware of, that it may not have a motive and it may not have emotions, but the information that is trained on the data is important, that we level the playing field as much as we possibly can. Otherwise, these large language models can perpetuate the human bias that we ourselves have. So that's something that I really ensure that my framework is also aware of, the bias within human data. And we can never get to zero. That's not, it's not possible, but to be able to be aware of this and also have the model be able to grow, because ethics, they change and they grow as they evolve. What is ethical today might not be ethical in 10 years. And so we need to leave space to say, hey, yes, these are the ethics that we adhere to today, but we need to be able to constantly update them as society grows and evolves. And also, as it relates to different cultures. What is ethical in America is not ethical in India, and we need to be aware of this. And this is another thing that I speak about, is this cultural diversity that LLMs don't really have. They're largely trained on Western data.
Yeah.
And it is unethical to input Western ideologies into a non-Western population. Now, we're not talking about human rights violation where people are being harmed. There are cultural practices within societies that we need to be mindful of. And every society, really, they need the ability to evolve and grow as they get more information. And when we try to speed that up and push our outside narrative that can cause a lot of internal friction. There are very many areas where these large language models, the data on their training corpus is not that good of a fit for the society that's using it. Like, for example, in America, a lot of the age that we allow our kids to date, you have a 14 or 15-year-old, and she wants to go on a date. And you say, she's talking to ChatGPT, and my mom won't let me date. And I'm so upset. And so, oh, this is the normal age for dating within society. But you're in a different society with certain values. And so she goes to her mom and she says, ChatGPT said that it thinks I should date. Right? And so now, if you have this kind of implementation of these values, and it causes a lot of friction where we know that there is an aspect to that society as to why we think the dating age might not be, it might be higher. We know how impressionable we are at 15 or 16. We know that we cannot analyze a situation adequately and how the teenage mind can bend to peer pressure. And we're like, okay, I'm not allowing you to date because I don't want you to have freedom. I'm doing this because I don't think that right now you're mature enough mentally or emotionally to handle this landscape. So this is why we have these rules in place. This is why, because I think you need to be able to be a little bit more mature to make decisions that can benefit you in the long run. So these are small nuances that exist within societies, but it's not the training data for these large language models are largely Western. And we can see the difference. Let's say if we have an ethical dilemma and we use DeepSeek versus ChatGPT, we'll see that DeepSeek has a different answer that from a Western lens might not be as ethical, but it's ethical within the society that it exists in. So that's also something that my framework takes into context. The cultural diversity that it's dealing with. What society am I being applied in? And how can I best serve this society and protect their values and protect what they consider to be sacred? Because the machine, it doesn't feel the fallout of bad decisions. It gets to walk away without blame and without any impact. And the human is left with the fallout. And I don't think that people are really truly aware that this is one of the failure nodes when using large language models.
If you were a policymaker at the top and you got to decide what regulations could be made, what are the two most important regulations you think that should be inserted into every large language model?
I think we need to have an age limit. We have it on pornography, right? 18 years or older, you cannot access the site. This is something that is reshaping human cognition in real time. We have guidelines on children not using electronics before a certain age. Granted, we do have iPads that we give to kids, but we know how it can impact their mind because the internet is a place where a lot of information is easy to access, and you don't want the wrong information to be accessed. So I think we should have an age restriction, or at the very least, between 13 to 18, the model must know that responses need to be age appropriate. So that's one thing. And then another thing is, I really do think that the underlying architecture of these large language models need to be redesigned.
Okay, more sense.
In the sense that the model needs to have an audit trail. The model analyze its output to say why it gave the answer it gave. Because
reasoning chain.
Yes. So I think that's one of the things that we need. And it doesn't have that right now. You can see it thinking, but you don't know why it gave you that answer. You don't see an audit trail of how it developed its output, which school of thought did it pull from, and how did it synthesize its data? We don't know any of that. It's largely opaque to the user. So I think those two things are very important. But to deploy it at scale, they won't make as much money as if they just roll something out that you can't really see how it's making its decisions. And I do think, though, governance models, it protects even the corporation's financial interests. If you've ever spoken with anyone who has been sued, even if you win the lawsuit, you have spent too much money in legal fees. And then the reputational damage is done, right? You there is always a fallout. You will lose customers. And sometimes you lose so many that you can never actually recover. So right now, because the space is so unregulated, people are being allowed to do whatever they want to do and deploy these models at scale. But eventually, we'll start to see lawsuits. Like the one with the teenager who committed suicide and ChatGPT told him how to do it. So that his parents ended up suing OpenAI. And so we're seeing some pushback, or the lawsuit that social media companies are currently facing right now because they're saying that they designed their platforms to be addictive to teenagers and young minds, because we know that young minds are malleable, they're impressionable. We know your mind isn't really, your prefrontal cortex, at 25, it's fully developed. We're dealing with children here. And I've never seen a technology that's this powerful come without any sort of regulation. When we built the car, we discovered people needed seatbelts, right? and airbags. So we figured out that, okay, this thing is it's really powerful, and we need to put some sort of safety measures in place. People can get hurt. And that's not happening with chatbots. And then the AI girlfriend and my AI boyfriend, and you're being able to build, and then you can say, do I want it to be 14 or 15? So what happens when a 14-year-old or 15-year-old has an AI girlfriend and then attempts to speak with someone that's real, right? They've been conversing with this chatbot for any number of time, and then they try to go and use the skills that they think they've developed on a real person, right? And they get rejected. And then the things that they said didn't work on the human as well as if they're not a chat. The emotional fallout from that, I don't think we're really sitting down and thinking about how we're downplaying our biology. We're downplaying why human beings are designed the way they are, why we evolved the way we did, and what are the evolutionary benefits to that. We should be able to handle rejection. We should be able to read body language and read nuance and be able to formulate an analysis, because we have to exist in this world together. Yeah. But when we're stuck speaking with something that we can't see and we can't touch, and then we try to go out in the real world, it will have an impact, because people are largely chaotic. We don't always know how something can be received, but something that always flatters you and is always receptive and always tells you how great you are, it doesn't do you any favors when you go out into the real world and you have to deal with real people. And we're losing this ability to handle friction, and we see it online. Everyone has an opinion in the comment section, and people are fighting sometimes for hours, and they wouldn't say half of the things that they've said online to someone's face. And we know this because when we're in front of the person, we value maintaining a connection. Yeah. And so this is something I worry about, because I have children, and one of them is about to be a teenager, and she's not allowed to use ChatGPT. So good decision. Yeah, and I'll ask her, have they made you use ChatGPT in school? And she would say, no, because I know some schools are trying to introduce it. She says, no, my school doesn't. So thank God. I don't think I'm ready for you to be exposed to this yet. And I also did tell her, whenever you're ready, whenever you start to use it, if your school implements it, please let me know so I can try to, as best as I can, train you how to protect yourself as much as possible from what this thing is telling you. But there's only so much critical thinking a 13 or 14-year-old is capable of doing.
Yeah. What resonated the most with me is that let's keep this philosophy aside of whether we should use AI models to help us or not. First of all, if, like you said, 25 is the age of neuroplasticity threshold, at least like 80 to 90%. Before that, if children do not even know foundational knowledge, then how can they rely on their own survival or anything else? At least we went to school. Yeah. So my point being that we're lucky enough that we had to use our own brain and challenges and follow adversities. But each limit is one of the design flaw right now.
Yeah. It can be accessed by anyone at any age. Yeah. Right? There was a point where my 5-year-old was talking using the voice tool to talk to ChatGPT. when I put my phone down. And so I started to have to lock it so that she can't access it. And she'll ask me sometimes, can I talk to my AI? And I'm like, no, baby, you can't. I'm so sorry. This, um, there is this unspoken rule in the tech industry that the people who design these things, they don't allow their kids to use it. They send their kids to smart. Yeah. But what do they do with our kids? They build it to be attractive to the masses. And we don't realize this. Like Steve Jobs, he didn't let his daughter use an iPad. But our kids grew up with iPad. So we see this imbalance where we have to really be aware of what we're handing to people and make them aware of the pitfalls of using these things long term.
One last question I have for you is, what is the takeaway you would like to give the audience if they just can imbibe one thing?
How valuable our humanity is. All of everything that we have created in this world, it started with a question. It started with us being curious. We looked up at the night sky and we wondered, what are those sparkly dots up there? And that gave birth to an entire field of science, right? We wanted to figure out the universe and we wanted to figure out our place in it, which were largely philosophical questions. But philosophy is simply asking questions about how things are done. Is there a better way to do it? And why? Whose idea was it to do this in this way? And the thing that I want people to really remember is not to lose that, not to lose that feeling of awe and wonder about the world around you. And so your answers are always going to be better to me than the large language model, because with your answers, there is your personality, your cultural lens, your lived experience, and that differentiator that makes you. And those all combine to give an output, right? Do not downplay the human mind. Do not take your mind for granted. Do not take how you see the world for granted, because there is a uniqueness in everyone. And now we're seeing it with the way people write. You can tell when it's written by a chatbot. It sounds the same. It sounds flat. It's like the humanity is being stripped out of things. And I think that's the one philosophy that I try to point people to. That you, as a human being, your mind, your insights, they are valuable and there is room for them.
Of course.
And to not forget that aspect. We can use AI to co-create. We can use it to help us to weed out certain distractions in an idea. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to your mind and how you use it. And the differentiator will be the person. And I said, ideas are going to be the new currency. And so protect them at all costs, because we have these things that can do an output, but it still largely relies on the human being to formulate an idea for it to create. It cannot create by itself. It needs your output. Don't overestimate something that still relies on your cognition in order to be able to create. So you'll see in the coming years, ideas are really and truly going to be worth more than we give them credit for, and they will be the new currency. And because as society evolves and changes, so does our thinking. A child born today can envision the next step, right? So we'll see as these large language models become more embedded in our daily life, our thinking shifts. And as our thinking shifts, our ideas will evolve. Just be aware of the formulation and how they grow, and protect them, and don't downplay them. So that's the takeaway I'd give anyone.
Thank you so much for your valuable insights.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me here. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure was mine.